Well, good morning, everybody. This is Sridhar speaking. I'm the co-founder of Aventi Group. I'm thrilled to kick off today's Aventi Live discussion. We're going to talk about buyer personas, right? And I know that virtually everyone here has done a buyer persona at some point, but the question is, do they make enough of an impact? Are they powerful enough, or is it just kind of a checkbox item? So today we're going to go over buyer personas. Why do they fall short? And then what can we do to really tap the full power of personas done right? And I'm super excited today to have Wayne Cerullo on the line. He's joined us today. I want to introduce Wayne. He's founded a company called B2P Partners. It's a consultancy, and they really make B2B marketing more powerful by making it more personal. Such an appropriate topic today, personal. For about 20 years, B2B Partners has been equipping companies with the power of knowing how and why their prospects buy or don't. Now, Wayne has helped shape global marketing at great companies, IBM, Microsoft, Intel. He's also, with his company, worked with companies like Siemens, Visa, Deluxe, Baxter, Fireman's Fund, and many other SaaS companies. And Wayne has a very prestigious undergrad with Princeton University, an MBA from NYU. He lives in San Francisco. And what I like best about Wayne is he and I go mountain bike riding in the East Bay. So I'm really thrilled. Wayne, good morning. Thank you for joining.
Awesome. Fun to not be in bike clothes and, have a normal conversation with you.
Hey, that's fine. Anytime you're ready to ride, I'm ready to jump on my bike. And I want to thank all the folks today who joined in from LinkedIn. We're really happy to have you. Thank you. And feel free throughout our conversation when Wayne and I are talking, just post questions or comments right there in the chat field, and I'll be able to see it and I'll give you a shout out. Whoever's joined today, I'll say hello. And so, Wayne, let's just jump right in. So why is it that buyer personas just don't seem to really make that much of a difference?
Yeah, isn't it a shame? We actually end up doing it as kind of a default as marketers. It's like something we have to do. You mentioned a checkbox. And, it's kind of expected of marketers. We've been working with personas since before they were expected. Actually, shortly after Alan Cooper and unveiled them in his asylum book in '99. Inmates are running the asylum. And what we've seen is that probably the number one thing is that it becomes just a repository for stuff we already know. We put it into a document, and it's like, the good thing is it's all in one place. But the bad thing is that it doesn't actually tell you anything you didn't already know. If by the end of reading a persona, you aren't any smarter, any more enlightened, you haven't noticed something that you never knew before, then what was the point? And that's because marketers often just kind of get around a pizza. We call these pizza personas.
Oh,
a bunch of folks get together. What do you know? What do you know? What do you know? Let's put it together. It all fits together. Oh, and what's their favorite color and what kind of car do they drive? Oh. And we don't actually get to the point of understanding how and why does this prospect buy or not? And so I'd say one of the reasons they don't push anything further is that there's no additional intelligence. There's no real research that's done on the issue. They're kind of obvious. They're also, I think, the fundamental thing, Sridhar, is that they're descriptions of roles, they're descriptions of people, but they don't answer the question, why would those folks buy from you? It's like, oh, this is a security buyer and they buy security software. Well, that's great, but you're not the security software association. You're actually trying to present an argument for a particular product in a particular use case at a particular kind of company. So if you're not bringing intelligence about why you're going to win that case, it's like, what are women like as opposed to what is your wife like?
Yeah,
probably go as well.
That's a good analogy there, Wayne. And I really resonate with your comment on why they buy. Both points, why, and also the they. And I found in our experience, one of the reasons personas just fall flat is that they're just so damn generic. Sorry, they're just super generic. We'll have something like a CIO of a company. A CIO is radically different if they're in a large enterprise financial institution, insurance company versus a CIO in a small real estate agency. in the Midwest versus an Asia Pacific company. So to me, they're just very generic. They're not very informative. They're not very three-dimensional. So Wayne, and I love both comments you made, the importance of the why they buy, and who they are specifically. So those are great. So why don't we turn now to, okay, so those are reasons why personas aren't really working great. What are things we can do as product marketers to make high impact personas? Love your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So actually, the first thing I'll mention is something that builds on what you were just saying. We just completed some research in which it became incredibly clear from all of the variety of folks with whom we were doing this research that if a company doesn't understand what kind of company they're selling to, if they're just selling to CFOs and they're not selling to mid-level CFOs at insurance companies, they're told me over and over again, they don't even pay attention. So unless you come with a very specific message that says you've done the homework, you care enough about me to have identified what my issues are, I'm not even going to look at any of your material. So just stop making it, stop sending it to me. The second thing is, and you just referenced this, is that in the enterprise environment, there are no individual decision makers. You know, we talk about buyers personas like, here's how you sell to the CFO, here's how you sell to the CIO. Well, neither of those guys make decisions on their own. They always make it in a group. So one of the other disciplines that we use is, in addition to creating buyer personas, we create account personas, because that's the dance card around which all these individual players interact. So if you don't know what the relationship is between the CFO and the CIO, let's just say, and we're using C as though everybody's a C-level person. So that's also something that I would address, because those people on the influencer levels, particularly in the enterprise, are huge. And one of the things we hear over and over again is that C-level people don't want to be making vendor decisions.
Well, true.
They want to have that connected with them. They want to orchestrate the process. So if your go-to-market strategy doesn't include all the personas that are helping to make this decision in an account persona environment, then you're missing the story.
Such a great comment there, Wayne, on the account persona. And before I just say a little bit more about it, I want to say shout out for a couple of people. Elizabeth Beamer calling in from Malta, which is near Italy. And welcome, Elizabeth. Glad you're here. Also, Scott Hornstein, thank you so much from Reston, Virginia, says hello. So thank you. Shout out to both of you. Appreciate your coming. Wayne, back to the account persona. It's so interesting. I want to share Gartner statistics. So Gartner did some research, and they found that the average enterprise purchase involves 6 to 10 personas, 6 to 10 stakeholders, and as high as 11 to 14. So to your point, it doesn't make sense to do one persona like, hey, here's the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. You really need to think about what are the stakeholders. Some of them are approvers, some of them are gatekeepers, some of them are naysayers, like, you know, keep you out of Dodge, prevent you from having some kind of compliance issue. So to your point, it's not just a single persona, but also the cast of characters and who's doing what role. So I really bring that out as well. Second point I wanted to make is, as you said about that persona is pain points. We really need to dive deep in what is their issue exactly. And, you know, you talked about vendors, too many vendors, that the CISOs, CIOs, there's another Gartner statistic. Sorry, I don't work for Gartner, but there's some good stats. And one of the stats they shared is the average Chief Information Security Officer has 72 vendors, 72 security vendors. They don't want 72 security vendors. They want like under 10, right? So it's very irritating when we're sitting here selling, and they want fewer vendors, not more. So you have to understand and appreciate where they're coming from. So yeah, what do you think of that there, Wayne? If you're one of 72, go ahead.
You know, 72 of anything is too much. I'd agree with that. And, you know, one of the themes I'm picking up from what you're saying is the importance of looking at things holistically. So if you're vendor number 73, you need to understand the context in which you're being considered. And you could have the very best Whittly bot that there is. I mean, clearly demonstrated. it's in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And you're wondering, why aren't these people buying? Well, the context is that they're trying to manage an entire environment of technology. And the question is, where do you fit in? And if you don't understand that question in advance, and you don't know what their play might be and what are the different scenarios, then that's going to frustrate you. One of the things that we do to help get at that is that when we do buyer persona research, we also do buyer journey work. So we understand about each of the stages that companies go through. And then the last part of it for the triple whammy that we provide is a win-loss perspective. So when we talk to personas, we look at the ones that have turned into your customers, the ones that have turned into your competitors' customers, and the ones who have turned into nobody's customer. Because another Gartner statistic is that they most B2B engagements end in no decision. So if you don't know how to compete against the status quo, then that's you're missing your key competitor.
Absolutely. And hey, Wayne, we got a question here from Scott Hornstein. He asks, isn't there a champion within an account? And don't we just need to talk to that one champion? What do you think about that?
It's a good question. So yes and no. So there is a person who feels the pain most strongly. And part of the role of the account persona is to identify who feels that pain most strongly. And it's not generic for every product. There may be some products within a category that are more oriented towards one particular pain or solving another one, and other people feel that. Then you need to know, what are the implications of that pain and what is that person going to do as a result? So that champion is actually your internal salesperson. And one of the things that we do is we look at what are the streams of communication that person is looking to foment, because at the end of the day, what everyone wants to do is create a consensus. Because without consensus, there is no decision, there's no progress, there's nothing. And another thing that, we call them buying committees, but they're actually not buying committees. They don't actually go out and buy something. They actually want to just solve a problem. And by the way, the best strategy for solving a problem is to ignore it or make it go away or make it someone else's problem. So the last thing you actually want to do is have to go out and get another vendor 73, and go through that whole RFP process. So we're really trying to solve problems. And if we don't start with that and think about that as the trigger, one of the questions that we ask right at the beginning in the work that we do, and I would recommend everybody do it this way, is not ask about when did you first find out about this product and what were your thoughts about the product, but when did you first decide that the situation inside your company was a problem worth solving?
Yeah, good.
Because that's when it actually becomes an issue where you want to get other folks together. And like, how often does the CIO and the CMO together? Not necessarily every day. So if they find a problem that they need to work together on, that's kind of an event. And now the biggest thing that's happening is internally, there's political capital that's being spent even before there's financial capital.
So, and Wayne, just to pick up on that comment about the political capital being spent, that champion is putting their reputation on the line internally. They're not just pitching your product. They have a problem they're trying to solve, and they're very much a hero, right? Within the company, within the politics, they're faced with some business problem. That champion is going out on a limb in a way to go solve that. Another Gartner stat, something like 2/3 of enterprise deals die. They just never actually come to fruition. There is no purchase. So about only 1/3 of the deals actually go forward. That champion is driving hard, perhaps. So how do we make that champion a hero? How do we support them, give them tools? And it's not all about our little company, our vendor side. It's about them, what they care about, how do we make them successful. Shout out to a couple more folks. Allison, Denver, Colorado. Awesome. Glad you're here. Eduardo from Brazil. So glad you're here today, Eduardo. Wayne, let's jump into some real examples. Let's give our folks here in the audience, again, folks in LinkedIn joining, feel free to ask questions. We're here for you. Keep going there, folks. Wayne, give us a couple of real stories. I'd love some buyer persona stories.
Yeah, it's great to be able to do this because we all need encouragement, don't we? It's like, yeah, sure. That theory sounds great. Like, has it ever made a difference? And I've been doing this long enough that I know that it has. And I'll tell you two brief stories. There are 2 of 6 that we actually put together. I've always wanted to do this in a book. Cool. On personas with punch. So if you need some encouragement, just go to the website and there's a bunch of these stories. The first one I want to tell you is one that's near and dear to the Silicon Valley heart, which was we were working with a very well-known large security company, and not to beat on that particular industry, but the person we were talking to was the PMM for version 11 of this software. Version 11, people. Wow. So if you're the person who is launching all the cool stuff about version 11, what do you want to talk about? Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Like all the cool things that version 10 didn't have. Yeah. Like, why do we need to do research? Like, this is pretty obvious. But it's what I love about these kinds of stories is that it's, you didn't know what you didn't know. So we were talking to SMBs, small and medium business owners, about their security needs and how they go about making decisions. And we said, like, look at this, there's version 11 out. It has this, this, and this. And one of the things that we discovered, since we do this independently and we're not doing this, we're not selling anything, the more we told them about it, the less interested they were. That's kind of a danger sign. So what we found out, and to get to the punchline of the story, is that since it's version 11, and what I love about these stories is that once I tell you the reveal, it's kind of like it's obvious again, but it's not obvious from the starting point. So that's amazing. So in this case, exactly, since it was version 11, it's like, apparently you guys are on top of this. And the more you know, the less I have to know, because like I've got a business to run and I don't want to know about security. So the more you're telling me about the bits and bytes that it has, the more overwhelmed I'm becoming. I'm also concerned about this really big product, or this product from this really big company, like being overwhelming and, crashing my system. So the more we sold about the obvious things that we knew, the less successful we were being. So that's one story. Right. Yeah. The other story is a similar one, and we have stories outside of technology, but this is also a technology security story. And this was for a company that the founder had created out of his own need years before, had been a graduate student, and had data difficulty with backup. Now, if you're a technology person and I use the phrase backup, your eyes immediately glaze over. It's like, okay, I think I have other things to do. So even for technology people and security people, backup is not interesting. So they were not able to get any interesting strategic conversations with senior decision makers at large companies. And we investigated what was going on in the space. So it took a little creativity to step back and figure out, how were people experiencing this? How are people emotionally connecting with this issue? And what we found was that backup was completely unimportant to them, but data recovery is, oh my God, absolutely center. There you go. So to make a long story short, again, what we did was, for this technology vendor who literally knew the names of the children of the people to whom he was selling and had been doing this for a quarter of a century, he knew everything about it. So again, another situation, and why I tell the story is like, why would we ever do research about this? Well, you don't know what you don't know. And you don't know it from the buyer's perspective, even though if you know their middle names and their kids' names. Yeah. And what this person found out, what this company found out, was that the value proposition that was interesting to people was the recovery of data, which led to their changing the way they talked about their company and changing the way they even priced what they offered, and totally turned the way the company went to market around. So it's a beautiful thing to actually walk, just a quarter of a mile in your customer's shoes, and it reveals things that you didn't know you didn't know.
Great. I love how you're underscoring the importance of research, Wayne. And yeah, it's nice to know the persona's favorite, or the name of their children, or that kind of stuff. That's very nice. It builds relationship. That's good, but it's not actionable. And so what I would add to your commentary, research is great. We need it. How do we make it actionable? So the thing I would just add is the personas that we do here at Aventi Group. One of the stories, we have a large global system integrator customer of ours, client of ours. They asked us to do persona work. And one of the things we did is research, just like you're recommending, Wayne. Well, we also looked at, what are the water coolers? Like, where are these personas hanging out? And when I say water cooler, I'm being very granular. Like, go into LinkedIn. What are the posts that person's, what comments? What are they sharing? What are they saying? That kind of stuff. Because it gives you an idea of when we are product marketers. And when we develop persona, we need to be informing the campaigns team. We need to inform the sales enablement team. We need to inform the demand gen team. Like, this persona, this is where they hang out. We need to get into LinkedIn. We need to get into this specific group. These are the bloggers who matter that you need to engage with and talk with. So I would just underscore and really emphasize, make them actionable. Make them actionable. This is not just like, this is the name of their children. That's nice. That's not actionable. So yeah, good one, Wayne. Let's move next. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Wayne.
Well, I was just going to add one small point to that, Sridhar. Really, really good call. So there are some companies that do personas as kind of a generic exercise. And like, here's a picture of who they are. But the thing that I always want to ask is, why are we doing it now? And there's always a business need somewhere. So is this essentially about messaging? Do we need to reposition? Do we need to update our go-to-market strategy? Do we have a competitor that we need to know how to respond to? Is there a new buying process that's involved? Is there a new person who's come into the account persona environment that is changing the way decisions are being made? So it really helps if you can focus the conversation around the issue to be solved. And what we do in terms of best practices is we meet with the entire group on the client side who's going to be involved in the results of this. So we meet with them before, and we find out, what are all the things that you guys think you know about this, and what are the questions that you have, and what are you going to do once you know? So let's just imagine I had all the answers right now. Where do you think we might go? So what we do to get the most use out of this, and this maybe goes from 3 benefits to 4, is that we also do kinds of concept testing in that same work. So if you want to know, should we go direction A, B, or C, why don't we listen for that in the way people are talking about the problems that they have, their pain points? And then why don't we ask them at the end, just as a provocation, hey, we're thinking about this, this, and this. What's your reaction to that? And then you'll be able to connect how they respond to the idea with what they've already told you about who they are and what's important to them. It's a wonderful way of putting everything together around the number one question that every company needs to answer, which is, how and why should people buy from us?
Yeah, how and why people should buy from us, and your comment around doing not just research, but testing, validating. And I want to give a shout out here. Eduardo Neves in Brazil writes, he had a similar, going back to your data recovery, disaster recovery comment versus, hey, I need backup. Backup is a solution to a problem, to an issue. And he comments, I had a similar case, customers willing to sell data center services, and we helped them to do it, but focusing on the business continuity, right? Business continuity, business keeps going. That was what really mattered, not backup or data restoration, which is critical. That's a feature. The benefit is this. So thank you, Wayne. That's a great comment. Also, Scott Hornstein asks again here, do you find that sales pushes back on marketing's personas? And hey, we already know the client better than you do, marketing, thank you, but no thanks. What do you think there, Wayne?
Scott, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes,
as well they should. As well they should. So, it's a great question because it's a great issue. It's a great test for your personas. So if your sales team is pushing back on personas, which sometimes there's kind of a religious issue, like we don't believe in personas, fine. How about we talk about buyer insights? Like, wouldn't you like to know before you speak with this potential buyer what it is that's motivating them, so that you don't have to ask in such a way that it sounds like, and we hear this all the time, please don't ask me what keeps me up at night. Like, I am so over explaining to people what I do. If you don't already know, why are you taking my time? So really good question about the sales engagement. In fact, actually, one of the things I think, Sridhar, you and I are going to talk about is probably around the issue of sales playbooks and turning this into a power source for sales playbooks. Mm-hmm. I think that there's intelligence that's required in the persona that is appropriate on the sales level. And then there's also packaging that's appropriate to turn a buyer persona, which is, kind of a marketing concept, into something where the sales team says, okay, that's in a form that's useful to us. And buyer personas as a whole for a sales team aren't all that interesting. You're telling me stuff I already know in a way. Mm-hmm. But if you're not bringing something new to the party and you're not doing it in a way that's consistent with the way salespeople want to absorb information, then you're not going to get so far.
Yeah, I absolutely, totally agree with you, Wayne. And salespeople should not be looking at personas. And Scott, to your comment, I'm glad they're pushing back because it's inappropriate. The better consumable is a customer success story, right? A real success story, a real customer. And salespeople always ask for tons. Hey, I need customer successes. I need case studies. It's often hard to get it from the sales folks to give me access to that customer, but the persona needs to come to life. It needs to be brought to life in a customer case study, for example, or customer presentations. Those are the deliverables that reps are actually using. And so, to your point, those are the consumables that we should do. Let me pivot. We only have we have a few minutes for two more questions here, Wayne. I got to pick your brain before we run out of juice here. One is on product marketing. So virtually everybody on this call is a product marketer or a go-to-market person. What are some things we should be doing to empower product marketers to do a better job around personas?
Yeah, it's a great question. Because product marketing is right at the core of B2B marketing. And it's, I think, where the most interesting things are happening or not. So if you're in the center of something, you either have the ability to orchestrate how things happen, or you get spun around by everybody else who's in their own world. And I've spoken with PMMs in both situations. What I would say the superpower of a PMM is to know more about how and why prospects buy than anyone else. Because the PMM has the ability, actually has the need, has the responsibility. The reason for product marketing is actually to connect the product with the prospect. So if you're not bringing that mojo, you really don't have a role. So what we like to do with PMMs who have to be kind of expert in a whole bunch of different areas is bring the thing that they need to be expert about, but probably don't have the time or maybe the skill set to be able to do. Also, it helps sometimes if the PMM is able to bring kind of independent voice of the customer into the conversation rather than saying, well, this is what I did, what I saw. So it allows them to kind of rise above that whole din of conversation and move from opinions to fact, to reality. And so one of the things that they can do is bring those individuals, personas, into the conversation. So sometimes we can do that for real, live. No, here's Joe. Joe's going to tell you why he bought. And, he represents $750,000. So like, you might want to listen to him. Right. The other is to, we capture the interviews that we do, quotes and fit photos. LinkedIn profiles. I mean, they're real people, so we can make them as real as they can. And I've never met a salesperson who could turn down somebody who is explaining why they bought from you or why they didn't. So let's not make it like, philosophical. Let's make it real. This is why you lost the business or why you won it. That's pretty powerful.
It's a great point of power. Where does product marketing get their power? It is being that voice of the customer and saying, why do they buy, and advocating, representing that internally, not just to sales, but to the product development team, product management team. Not that those folks are not also advocates, but really product marketing needs to be the voice of what is the problem our customer is trying to solve, or the business opportunity they're going after, and how can we help. It's not about feature, function, propellers, kind of stuff. It's about the why. The second thing I would add to your comments, Wayne, I love the why focus on PMMs. We're all about why. I think we're also about who. Product marketing needs to be very granular on the who. It drives me insane when personas say, oh, CIO, 50-year-old man likes online gaming. Well, okay, how many people fit that description? So it's who has to be super granular. And when I say who, I mean, think about targeting the demand gen team. They need to know, well, what list should I be buying? The job title, the geography, the industry, infrastructure that's in-house. So this persona to me, it needs to just shout off the top of the hill, why? And Wayne, that is your probably strongest takeaway from today's discussion. Why do they buy? I would just add the who. Who are these people? And the who should be so clear that people that you are not targeting are obvious too. Like if it doesn't fit this filter, don't go after them from a demand gen, from a sales point of view, from an enablement point of view. So the who and the why together are super powerful for product marketing. So let's kind of wrap it up here. Wayne, last question for you is, how do we promote, we're product marketers, how do we promote the use of personas, and how do we really apply them to move the needle, make a difference? So any closing thoughts on that question?
Yeah.
Guys in the audience, feel free to ask questions.
Good question. I'm sorry. So Sridhar, I want to make a connection to something that you've done previously. So you spoke with my colleague, Daniel Zamudio, about sales playbooks just in the prior podcast. And he and I have actually connected around bringing together the power of sales enablement, which is, what are the things that salespeople need to understand and be equipped with to be able to be successful in a very tough job, with buyer enablement. So how do we help buyers buy? A friend of mine wrote a book that says, selling is hard, buying is harder. And I would agree with that. When you're selling, you know what you want to do. Everything is lined up. When you're buying, you don't know what you don't know. That's why you're out exploring. That's why you're you're taking all these demos, talking to all these salespeople, because you have to make a decision about a responsibility that you don't know all the information about. So it's a vulnerable place. So the sales playbooks that we create are the only ones that have the power of understanding the best practices of how sellers sell, with insights about how buyers buy. And I think obvious is another one of the key points in this conversation, is when you say that, it's like, why would you do it any other way?
Yeah.
And that's the way that we tend to do it. I'd also add to what you said about the why, and the who is the when.
Yes.
So it's nailing the pain point. People aren't in the same pain all the time, right? Yeah. They are in a pain point at a certain time. That's when that CIO who isn't a prospect becomes a prospect, because they're feeling a particular pain. So I just add that as
a good one.
Word.
I love it. Who, why, who, and when. And on the when, by the way, we talked about pain points there, Wayne. We have a blog post article around the 10 questions you should be asking when you're doing customer research to get deep. And product marketing really owns this. What's the problem the customer is facing, the prospect is facing, or the opportunity? Sometimes it's not a problem, but it's an opportunity they're trying to grow. So the who, the why, the when are absolutely essential. Maybe we can close with I think storytelling is really important. Personas tend to be very flat, very two-dimensional, but how do we bring them to life with stories? And a story typically has the three-act, the old Aristotelian, three-act drama, right? Which starts off with, some kind of context. Then there's the challenge, the problem, the defining moment, like, oh my gosh, something bad's happening. Then the hero comes through that victorious. Similarly, in personas, I think it's really important to tell the story. So what is this person going through? This person being that buyer, making it easy for them to buy and empathize with their situation. So I would just underscore things like, we have some blog posts on the Aventi site around storytelling, around customer pain point. And Wayne, I want to really plug your book around Personas with Punch. Wayne has written this fantastic book. We'll put the link there in LinkedIn and on our blog post on our website. That's a wonderful asset that I think all product marketers must read. It's a must read, Personas with Punch from Wayne Cerullo. Perhaps we can just wrap here, but Wayne, any final closing thoughts that you want to impart with the team and questions from the audience? We're happy to take them, and then we'll close it out here.
Super, thanks.
Kind of final thought.
Talk with you. So just you used a word that I've recently had an experience with about empathy. Yes. And I ended up writing a series of posts and compiling an ebook, which I know you guys are offering, on buyer empathy, why it matters and how to get it. Because at the end of the day, the answer to your question is that we need to care. So if you're coming from the perspective of we have stuff to sell, there's no reason for anyone to be interested. That's your problem. That's our problem. Mm-hmm. If you're helping people solve problems, then that means that you are on their side. You have empathy with them. And I recently had an experience, which I won't go into. It's in the ebook, about my discovering that there were limits to my empathy. And I realized just how important, in a way that I had never before, it is to be able to get into the shoes of your prospect and understand the problem that they're trying to make go away. And so it just enables companies to be much more holistic in their the way that they go to market, mm-hmm. and not just talk about products. People don't want to buy products. They want to get solutions. And right. So who you are is just as important as what you sell, and maybe more.
That's a great closing thought. I think you just added a fourth, which is the how. So we started off talking about why are customers buying? What's the problem we're trying to solve? We talked about who exactly, very specifically, three-dimensionally, is that buyer. We talked about when, like, why act now? Why not just status quo, suffer the pain? Remember I said, Gartner says 2/3 of deals never come to life. Purchases don't happen. That's the status quo, the when question. What you just said there, Wayne, is how we speak to these prospects is full of empathy, understanding. It's about them. It's buyer-centric, not vendor-seller-centric. So what a lovely closing call to action for product marketers. It's about the who, it's about the why, it's about when, and then ultimately how we go about our communications and our engagement. So lovely takeaway. I don't see any final questions here from our audience. So we thank you. I thank you so much, Wayne. You have a ton of good information. I encourage people to read that book, 2 books that you've recommended and blog posts from you. We have resources on the Aventi website. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Wayne. We're going to hop on a mountain bike maybe this weekend. It's pretty hot here in the East Bay, but let's do that. Okay, Wayne?
Sounds great, man. Thanks so much.
Right, awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.